Okay, for warming up the first 10 or 20 minutes, so please explain what is meant by evaluation, assessment, and test. Anyone, please? What do you know about the term evaluation, assessment, and test? So before the first group presents, there are topics on the chapter 1. Mas Hakim, coba.
Ya, Pak.
Mbak Erwina.
Iya Pak, dari evaluation is actually a process of defining the level of competence based on the result of the test. The test is a method to measure the ability based on the real-time performance, and the assessment is actually a wider scope of the test itself to evaluate to observe how far the achievement is gained by the students from outside the not from outside, from in the wider scope, which relate with the competence. That's it, sir.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else would like to complete Erwina's explanation about the differences between evaluation, assessment, and test? So Erwina said that assessment is the widest in scope, right? And then followed by number 2, evaluation, or which one is in the widest scope between evaluation, assessment, or test?
It's the
Kind of
widest.
the umbrella, which one is the widest scope?
I think widest can be this evaluation, and then the middle is assessment and the test.
I see. Okay, can you give an example of evaluation? Yeah, one of them is test. An example of evaluation is test. So if I say like, okay, our evaluation is you have UTS, you have assignment, you have UAS. Yeah, that is the one of the form in evaluation. Yeah, but also you could what the meaning of evaluation is broader more than test. Anyone else? Can you further explain?
Sir, I have defined in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, let me check in the meeting chat. Yeah. Can be defined as a systematic determination of subjects' merit with significance using criteria governed by a set of standards in the academic field. Okay, what else? Okay, let's check in the my PowerPoint the testing in ELT. This is the assessment, gitu ya. So as I said, assessment is the measurement of the ability of a person or the quality of success of teaching course. Measurements of the ability of a person or the quality or success of teaching course. Assessment may be by test, interview, questionnaire, observation. It means that assessment is wider than test. Test is smaller scope, let's say like time constraint or. So that is why we have in our university, we have assessors, assessors to assess our quality of the university in many aspects, not only. So we have to provide documents. So I'm not sure about every 2 years or there will be evaluation or assessment from Director General of College or perguruan tinggi ya, the Dikti. To see to see its university's development, yeah. Just to, let's say like, to decide the rank or something like that. So the higher our score, so perhaps we will get more, let's say like in the school level, we will get both or more funds from the government. So like can be in the score using hundreds, like 400 and 500 and so on. And then you could see the test, and any procedures for measuring ability, knowledge, and so on. Let's see the ini evaluation ini kan. In general, the systematic gathering of information for purposes of decision making. So if you evaluate, so you will make decision whether the program is worth continuing or whether the program should be stopped. Evaluation uses both quantitative methods like tests or qualitative methods, observation, ratings, or reading skills, value judgments. In language planning, evaluation frequently involves gathering information on patterns of language use, language ability, and attitudes towards the language, and so on. Yeah, okay. So before starting our discussion presented by Arvina and Hakim, so at least we have what complete picture about what is meant by evaluation, assessment, and test, or later teaching. Yeah, teaching. If we refer to Brown, you have assessment, test, and teaching. Yeah. Okay, Arvina and Hakim, are you ready for your presentation? So you could prepare and we can start your presentation followed by question answers discussion concerning chapter 1, or it can be other issues concerning language testing or language assessment.
Okay, sir. I will prepare,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. Yeah. This taken from Richard's kind of the Longman Dictionary of Applied Linguistics by Jack Richards, Platt, and Weber. Yeah.
Lutfi, I think it's not the PPT we are making.
Okay, wait.
Just download this game.
Arvina.
Yes, that's right. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So this is our very first presentation this year, and at this time, I will buddy up with Lutfi to present the chapter 1 from Douglas Brown's book, Language Assessment. And the first presentation will be delivered by Lutfi, and the rest will be delivered by me. Lutfi, please. Thank you.
I will explain about testing, assessing, and teaching. So first of all, about the test, assessment, and teaching, and second about the approaches to language teaching, and the third is current issues in the language teaching. So the test, assessment, and teaching. What is three of them? First is the assessment and teaching.
Louder, please, Lutfi.
Okay, sir.
Lebih keras. Tidak
Already
sekeras
done,
yang
sir.
tadinya.
Okay.
Dekatan dengan apa mic atau apa itu ya.
Okay. Assessment and teaching. Assessment divided into two, and There is informal and formal assessments. The informal assessment is immersed in given text on a classroom scheme without a recording. The results and judgment about students' proficiency, and the formal assessment is a regular exercise specified, wholly tailored to collect students' achievement data. So the formal assessment is this is a grade based assessment where teachers use grading system to evaluate the students' performance. The formal assessment use multiple data driven methods that teachers use to evaluate students, like a norm reference and criterion reference. I will explain that later. So and the next is what is an informal assessment is informal assessment method is an intuitive assessment wherein the teachers do not evaluate student performance on some grade or metric. Rather, they focus on observing students' performance and progress at different stages of their learning time frame. Informal assessments are conducted using various forms of evaluation. Example, like a teacher might ask her students to summarize their learnings at the end of the day. She or he can then understand how much the student have understood the topic. Another way for the teacher to evaluate students' performance through informal assessment is that the teacher can ask students to fill out and exit a survey with the close-ended questions where students can express their imagination, understanding, and the doubt regarding their learnings. Informal assessment is dependent on how a teacher wants to conduct it and prove from the students. Uh, Next is compare and contrast from the informal assessment and the formal assessment. Informal assessment, if we compare and contrast, informal assessment is more flexible, dynamic, individualist, continuous, and process-based, and progress measuring. And from the formal assessment is more structured, static, standardized, episodic, and product-based knowledge testing. And so approach to language testing. Have you uh, the essay translation approach divided into four. The first is essay translation approach and structuralist approach. The third is integrative approach, and the fourth is communicative approach. So, eh, excuse me, sir. Wait a moment, sir.
Formative and summative assessment, gitu ya.
Yes, sir. Salah pencet. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, wait a moment, sir.
Do you need my help, Lutfi?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll try to back you up. Yeah, I'll share the screen. Yeah.
Should be followed by compare and contrast between informal assessment and formal assessment. Ya.
Have you guys seen the screen now?
Yeah, and I could see.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Lutfi, you can continue, and I will back you up with sliding this screen. Sorry.
Mbak Irwana notice.
Okay, Lutfi. Slide
Ini yang
number 5.
di screen saya yang keluar kok malah
Mbak Irwana, you
PPT saya
put
ya.
the wrong PowerPoint.
I think you should stop presenting, sir. Then let me share screen.
Oke, nah. Tapi kendalinya kan yang stop. Ya, oke. Nah, ini sudah tadi hilang lagi.
Have you seen?
Okay.
Ya, oke.
I will continue.
Compare
from the
contrast informal
fifth
between
slide.
informal and formal assessment.
Okay. 6 slides, Mbak Erwina, please. Okay, I will explain. I will
Yang itu
continue.
tadi compare contrast, Mas Lupin.
Okay.
Nah, itu ya.
If we compare and contrast, I will continue. If we compare and contrast from the informal assessment and formal assessments, from the informal assessment is still like a flexible, dynamic, individualized, continuous, process-based, and progress measuring. And from the formal assessment is more structured, static, standardized, episodic, product-based, and knowledge testing. Next. Okay. Approaches to language testing divided into four. The first is essay translation approach. The second is structuralist approach and integrative approach. And the last is communicative approach. So what is the essay translation approach? The essay translation approach is commonly referred to as the pre-scientific stage of the language testing. No special skill or expertise in the testing is required. The subjective judgment of the teacher is considered to be of a paramount importance. The test usually consists of essay writing, translation, and grammatical analysis. The tests also have a heavy literary and cultural bias. Public examinations like secondary school leaving examination resulting from the essay translation approach sometimes have an oral component at the upper intermediate and advanced level. So the second is the structural approach. So what is the structural approach is characterized by the view that language learning is chiefly concerned with the systematic acquisition of a set of habits. It draws on the work of structural linguistics, in particular, the importance of contrastive analysis and the need to measure the learner of disparate element of the target language, like phonology, vocabulary, and grammar. Such mastery is that using words and sentences completely divorced from any context on the grounds that a larger sample of language from can be covered in the test in a comparatively short time. The skill of the structuralist approach is like listening, speaking, reading, and writing are also separate from one another as much as possible because it is considered essential to test or at the same time. Such features of the structuralist approach are, of course, still valid for certain type of test and for certain purpose. And the third is the integrative approach is more involve the testing of language in context and in concert primarily with the meaning and the total communicative effect of the discourse. Consequently, integrative tests do not seek to separate language kits into neat division in order to improve the test reliability. Instead, they are often designed to assess the learner's ability to use two or more skills simultaneously. Integrative tests are concerned with a global view of proficiency and underlying language competence of or grammar of expectancy. Oral interviews like translation and essay writing are also included in many integrative tests, a point frequently overlooked by those who take too narrow a view of integrative testing. And the fourth is the communicative approach. Is A language testing is sometimes linked to the integrative approach. However, although both approaches emphasize the importance of the meaning of utterance rather than their form and structure, there are nevertheless fundamental differences between the two approaches. The communicative tests are constantly primarily with how language is used in communication, and consequently, most aim to incorporate texts which approximate as closely as possible to those facing the student in real life. And indeed, few supporters of the communicative approach will argue that communicative competence can ever be achieved without a considerable mastery of the grammar of language. Next, formative and summative assessment. So, formative assessment is considered one of the most influential ways to improve teaching and learning process. And the summative assessment is intended to evaluate student learning by comparing performance to a standard benchmark. So, what's what is the meaning of concerns? Because the example is like you must focus on teaching and learning process, and the summative assessment is focused on intent to evaluate student learning by comparing performance. That is the comparing, if we compare it. Next, this compare and contrast. Formative is occurs through a chapter or unit, improve how student learns, cover small content areas, monitor how students are learning, focus on the process of student learning. And the summative is occurs at the end of the chapter or unit, evaluates what student learns, covers complete content areas, assign a grade to student understanding, emphasize the product of the student learning. Like I said before, next, the goal. What is the goal from the formative assessment is to monitor student learning, to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructor to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. And the goal of summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Next, so norm reference refers to standardized tests that are designed to compare and rank test takers in relation to one another. Tests that measure performance against a fixed set of standard of criteria are called criterion reference tests. That is the norm reference and criterion reference test. So I will explain. Do we say like a test is norm reference versus criterion reference? Actually, that is a slight misuse. The term norm reference and criterion reference refer to score interpretation, Most tests can actually be interpreted in both ways, though they are usually designed and validated for only one of the others. Uh, this is even like a primarily intended interpretations. Next, difference between norm and criterion test. Criterion reference test, and from the norm reference test is from the performance. Norm reference test is can judge on the basis of the other student performance, and from the criterion is each student is independently assessed. For the comparison is it compares a student performance with the other student. From the criterion is it does not compare a student performance with the other student. From the objective, assess a student performance with the other students, and the criterion is helps student learn without getting questioned about the grades. And from the criteria, their criteria change with outcomes, and from the criterion is they have fixed criteria for the assessment. From for the result is takes time to try to drive a result, and therefore for the criterion is result can be derived quickly. The example is like for the norm reference is class examination, and the criterion is like clinical skill competency tools. Next, approach to language testing, a history. A brief history. I will tell you about the brief history of the language testing over the past half century will serve as a backdrop to an understanding of classroom-based testing. Historically, language testing trends and practices have followed the shifting rules of the teaching methodology. For the example, in the 5th centuries, testing focused on the specific language element, such as the phonological, grammatical, and lexical contrast between two languages. In the 70th or till 18th century, communicative theories of the language proved with them a more integrative view of testing. Today, test designers are still challenged in their quest for more authentic, valid instruments that simulate real-world interactions. Next, this is discrete point and integrative testing. Discrete point tests are constructed on the assumption that language can be broken down into its component parts and that those parts can be tested successfully. These components are the skills of listening, speaking, reading, and also writing. Integrative testing have two different examples, like a closed test and dictation. Closed test is reading passage in which roughly every 6 or 7 word has been deleted, and the test taker is required to supply words that fit in the those blank. For the dictation is a familiar language teaching technique that involved into a testing technique. Essentially, the learners listen to a passage that read aloud by the teacher or audio tape and write what they hear using the correct spelling. Discrete point tests are constructed on the assumption that language can be divided into its component parts, and those parts can be tested successfully. The components are the skills of listening, listening, speaking, reading, and also writing, and various units of language of phonology, morphology, lexicon, and syntax. Discrete point tests aim to achieve a high reliability factor by testing a large number of discrete items, but each question tests only one linguistic point. And for the integrative testings, like testing of language in the context and is this concerned primarily with meaning and the total communicative effect of the discourse. This approach states that communicative competence is a global that it requires the integration of a language of all linguistic abilities. So the fact that discrete point and integrative testing only provide a measure of the candidate's competence rather than measuring the candidate's performance brought about the needs for communicative language testing. I think the language testing field had abandoned arguments about the unitary competence and had begun to focus on designing communicative language testing. Next. Next, okay. The communicative language testing by the middle of 80s centuries, the language testing fields neglect the arguments about the unitary traits hypothesis and started to focus on designing communicative language testing tests. A case for the authenticity was launched as test designers centered on the communicative performance and also particularly highlight the value of the of planned competence. Uh, the ability to utilize strategies that compensate for failure as well as the enhance the rhetorical effect of the utterance in the process of the communications. Next.
Thank you, Lutfi. Lutfi has presented the first 14 slides, and the rest of the slide will be presented by me. Thank you. So I continue the next slides about the assessment. It's actually still related from the previous subchapter. Yes, previous chapter. We have here this approaches to this classroom testing. So the first one, the assessment is based on the performance. Is typically concerns about the oral and written production, open-ended responses, integrated performance that involves 4 skills: writing, listening, speaking, and reading, group performance, and other interactive tasks. And specifically in the English language teaching context, it is based on the challenge to differentiate between the formal and informal assessment. And it is involving a lot of the interactive tasks that make the students more engaged in the language learning. And the next one is we have found some issues in the testing, the language testing. The first one is there are like new theories of views of intelligence. The second one, alternative assessment, and also there is another alternative kind of testing, which is computer-based. The first issue we are discussing here, the new theories of views on intelligence, that it was previously viewed as the ability to perform linguistic and logical mathematical problem solving. It is previously viewed as the ability to perform linguistic and logical mathematical problems or matters, yeah. So based on these two. But later on, there are some psychologists like Howard Gardner, Robert Sternberg, and Daniel Goleman that began to change the theory, and it is also quoted by Robert Sternberg that it was stated by Robert Sternberg that there is new territory of intelligence, and it involves the creative thinking and also the manipulative strategies. Also added by Daniel Goleman, 1995. He brought up the concept of emotional quotient because maybe generally we know the quotient is IQ, yeah, intelligence quotient. But now Goleman have also brought up the EQ. The next one. Okay, these are the, let's say, the alternative intelligence that have been brought up by Gardner instead of the previous views of what are the standard intelligence was based. It was, as I mentioned before, it was only about linguistic and logical mathematical, but now there are more. We have here at least 5: spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. And we have spatial here means that you have also the intelligent if you can find your way around your environment. It's more about this mental strength, yeah. Musical, if you are able to master or to create some rhythmic patterns. Bodily kinesthetic, if you are like fit enough to do some fine motor movement, to perform some motor movement, and I think it relates closely with those who are athletes, yeah. And then interpersonal is the intelligence that relates the understanding about others, about their feelings, and how they can have good empathy, how they can communicate and interact effectively with the others. And intrapersonal is the intelligence where you can understand about yourself, and you can develop yourself to be a better self, to be a better person. That's what I can sum up from what is displayed here. The next one, the next issue is also about there are other assessment, which is called alternative assessment, and we can see here some differences between traditional and alternative. Traditional, it happened only one time, and it's also very standard. Alternative, it can commence in the continuous time, and then it is also a long term. And traditional it's like exact time, and then usually it is provided in the multiple choice form, while alternative is like a free creative answer type of questions. And traditional, the contextual text item means like it can be like fictional, but alternative is more of this empirical, and it relates more closely with whatever happened in daily life of the students. And traditionals, the scores is enough to show, to give the feedback, to get the figure about the feedback. But in the alternative is not only the feedback but also the swashback. Traditional is norm reference scores. Alternative is criterion reference scores. Traditional is exactly focused on the right answer. Alternative, it's like widely open to any creative answer that still makes sense. Traditional is summative. Alternative is formative. Traditional is oriented to product. Alternative is process oriented. And then the next one is traditional is non-interactive, alternative is more interactive, and traditional is foster extrinsic motivation, alternative is only intrinsic motivation. And then next one, we come to the last issue we found in the classroom testing. We have now this computer-based testing. I think for the last decades, it's already been ruled with this computer-based testing. So it's practical and it is like less time consuming. So here are some features about this computer-based testing, and what is very popular is called CAT, Computer Adaptive Test. So it starts with question of like less difficult to more and more difficult. And then the test taker only see one question at a time, and when they answer, then they cannot like skip and they cannot like correct. So it's just real time answer. Then they can get this score instantly. There are advantage and disadvantage about this CAT. So we have here this advantage is a very classroom based testing. So is relate closely with what is going on with the classroom. I think the test taker will be like more familiar. And then the second advantage is it's self-directed testing that involves various aspects of a language, and it takes the high standard of the test, and it is also involves the individualization. So maybe each student can be observed in a more accurate feedback or evaluation. And then it is mostly provided in a large scale standardized test, so it can be tailored easily with a large number of test takers and in any different place. So it is very effective that the result can be gained in a short time. But also they have also this the disadvantages. Of course, there is a possibility of the test taker that they can cheat. Yeah, because it's not like, how do you call, like face-to-face supervised. Then occasionally there is a wrong validation because of the, this some unofficial website may provide some misleading information that may be taken by the test taker to support how they answer. And also the multiple choice format, they have also some minus points, some flaws about the design. And the open-ended responses is not possible to be given because it's all about the exact score, like A to A, B to B, something like that. And also there is no interactive shame involved. So it's like a lack of, let's say, human freedom to express themselves or to express themselves in the form of the answer of the test. So we are now getting to the last page. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any question, please please tap on the chat or just speak up. Then maybe I will try to answer and also Lutfi. Thank you very much. Terima kasih Pak.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Erwina and Mas Hakim. So next will be questions answers. So question can be put on the meeting chat and then just for what? For further comprehension about the first chapter about testing, assessing, and teaching. Okay, please. Or you could what the wave your hand, acungkan tangan gitu ya. Or just write on the meeting chat ya, concerning the topic. So we still have 40 minutes to, so while you are writing your questions on the meeting chat, let me go to the Siap for your attendance. Have sent to the group, please try to scan the barcode. Yeah. Okay, questions from the Erwina and Hakim, please. Question or comment, up to you. Just the point is to share information what we know, also to deepen our knowledge about the topic, that is the evaluation, test, yeah, and assessment. and teaching. Yeah. Or if you have any experience in teaching, can you tell me how you assess your students? How you assess your students? So in the past, before credit system, so we got score in the form of numbers. Let's say like 6, 7, 8, 9, or just like in the elementary school or secondary school, high school. But now, even for elementary school, so the score, the assessment, besides numbers, also they are expressed in what, in letters. Yeah, let's say like A, B, C, D. So like my granddaughter, she studies at the Islamic school, Primadana. So the grade is quite high because compared to ours. So in that school, so only those getting 90 and then you will get A. But ours is from 80. Because why? Perhaps too many smart students get 80, more than 80, and then so the standard is shifted to what, not 80 but 90. But in general, what we do in universities, so A starting from 80 to 100, and then 70 to 80, yeah, 71 to 80. So you will get B, and then from 61 to 69 you will get C. From I don't know, 51 to 59, or you will get D, and then under you will get E. Yeah. So compared to British system and American system, I suppose, to my mind, because it can be subjective. Yeah. So American lecturers are more generous compared to British lecturers. That is my impression. Because when I studied for my master degree, so my maximum score is only B, yeah, B plus, B plus, or I never got A. So only non-native one student from Senegal, so he got A minus. Yeah. Even the brightest one also he couldn't get A. Only native what, the get A. Yeah. Also when I was taking my S1, that is the doctoral degree, in brackets, not for PhD but in my time. So in my time you will get BA, Bachelor of Arts, for 3 years. Now like Diploma 3, first year up to 3 years, and then you will continue to doctoral degree. That is, you will get doctorandus degree, yeah, and adapted from that system, yeah, doctorandus. So when I join like a novel lecture taught by the local lecturer, meaning the Japanese lecturer, I only got C. But after being taught by American lecturer, American teacher, so he was kind of VSO. VSO stands for Volunteer Service Overseas. So they came from either Britain or USA to teach English course for 1 year, teaching lecturers plotted to study abroad. Also, she or he taught in the English department, teaching novel, because his background was literature or something like that. So I could get A for my novel subject. But before I could never get A from native lecturer, meaning the Indonesian lecturer. So then I concluded that the American lecturer, some perhaps are more generous compared to British lecturers. When I took my master degree in England. So what I do is before COVID, meaning from the first 2 or 3 meetings, and then I could label, or I could which students are more, let's say, like committed, more responsible, having better self-discipline from the first several meetings. That is called, what is it, Arvina? What kind of assessment is it? From my impression, from my informal observation. Yeah.
Formative assessment, sir?
Yeah, formative assessment, or I could say informal assessment, meaning so let's say in the Brown, if I say, well, nice job, good, yeah. So it is in the form of informal assessment. So it is continuous, yeah, day by day, yeah. And also I would say like subconscious, meaning unlike what summative test or formal assessment, so you have time constraint and then schedule, yeah, and also the covering the let's say like for the first half of the semester, that is or I could say this kind of evaluation can be UTS or mid test or progress test. You have the final test, but also you may have the continuous evaluation. Also can be in the form of portfolio, yeah. Or like writing journals on assignments. So when I was in England, there was no classroom test. All assignments or assessment in the form of writing essay. Let's say like the formative essay, meaning it is for my progress from the first, let's say like the 6 or 7 meeting. So the coursework lasted for 1 year, or let's say, sorry, 9 months, because my program was only for 11 or 1 year. So 9 months for coursework, meaning theoretical matters, classwork and assignment, and then for 3 months you are supposed to write your dissertation. So in England, the term is different. So dissertation is for master degree, and thesis is for PhD degree. So vice versa, like, but in USA you, or in our country, so you would say dissertation for S3 or PhD, and then thesis is for master degree. I don't know in Pakistan, Mas Sarfaras or Hen, the from what is the term for like the thesis or dissertation? Sarfaras or Hen?
Yes,
Or
both.
yeah, or Stella, yeah. What
For
is
thesis?
the term in, yeah, thesis is for master degree, dissertation is for PhD, right? In your country.
Yes. Yes, the same. Yeah.
Pakistan, yeah?
No, Egypt.
Egypt,
Misr.
yeah, Egypt, I see. But in England, in at my university, so dissertation is for master degree, and then thesis is for PhD degree. The
It's so different.
yeah, reversed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here in my country, so dissertation is for PhD, and then thesis is for master degree.
Yes, sir.
And for undergraduate level, we say scriptsi, or you could say extended essay. Scriptsi, script, yeah. Scriptsi, script. Okay, and the question for Erwin and Hakim concerning those various terms in, because you should be familiar with those terms, because later the assignments will be, yeah, will deal with such terms, meaning in theoretical level, also in your practice, that is what language testing project, yeah, meaning you're supposed to design a test and then to be tried out, and then you are supposed to analyze or to scoring. I suppose you could read in the guidelines, language testing projects. And yeah, it should be done in the second half, starting from semester 9. So you should think about the types of tests. So whether using what multiple choice or essay test. Also, you should be familiar, knowledgeable concerning some terms in language testing. So you can refer to Hidden, the second book will be taught in the second half. And then for theoretical matters in the first half of the semester by Brown, yeah, Douglas Brown.
Sir,
Yeah.
Nurul Maniar have a questions on chat
Okay.
box.
please.
And we already answer about it in chat room, in chat box. May you check it?
Yeah. From Nurul or?
From Nurul
Nurul.
Ismania.
Nurul, okay.
So what kind of formative assessment you
What
think?
formative assessment you think that teacher can use to evaluate students' ongoing learning process? Incentive quiz in between the teaching. Yeah, so yeah, like the small quiz as I did before, so it is called formative assessment. Yeah. Small quiz, the meaning the questions. Insertive quiz, what does it mean? Insert meaning inserted, yeah, between the period or
Yes, sir.
yeah.
A bit in the middle of teaching, for example, when the
Yeah,
teacher deliver the material, then
yeah,
once a time to time, he will pop up the question to the
yeah.
students.
Okay, yeah. Okay, any other comments concerning the so what I got in the we are supposed to write formative essay, yeah? Formative essay meaning to see our progress, the students' progress. So we in what do you call the my courses consists of, let's say, like I could mention some, the course and syllabus design, and then methods and materials. So different from your program. So in my program, methods is combined with the materials, meaning so beside teaching method, you are supposed to develop teaching materials. But here, theory and methods of language teaching, right? And then you have another course is called materials development, right? By Budeli atau Budeli yang Budeli teaches that course, right?
Yes, sir.
And then we have the language testing. Yeah. So the title is, the name of the course is language testing. And then in methods and materials, you are supposed to review a kind of course book. Course book. So can be traditional ones or already communicative ones, meaning if you choose the first one and then you could select from course books published in around 60s gitu ya. And for the communicative ones after 70s. Also, your assignment, you are supposed to adapt from the traditional course books, change into the ones which are more communicative. So my program at the time is called TESP, Teaching English for Specific Purposes. So if you study ELT in England, so you should have at least 1 year experience. Otherwise, your application will be rejected, even though you could afford paying the fee, school fee, or the tuition. But the requirement is you should have teaching experience at least 1 year. So there was a story about one of my students. She is the daughter of rich man, yeah, and the sponsor is her own father. But because fresh from the oven, meaning just graduating from S1 undergraduate, and then she would like to continue to England taking ELT, but the application was rejected because she needed at least 1 year experience. Akhirnya enggak lanjut karena keburu apa ya, menikah atau apa gitu ya, terus punya anak terus ya, kalau enggak jadi gitu ya. Okay, and any other comments or questions for Erwina and or tell us your experience as a teacher or as learner about the assessment from your teacher or you are as a teacher. Like Hen Farouk, have you got any experience or not yet?
Actually, but I don't work as a teacher, so
Yeah,
I don't have much
translation, yeah.
experience about that.
Sarfaras, have you got any experience in teaching or designing tests or siapa Sadaf, ada enggak? Stella, ya. Hazel or Ifunda, Nurul, Francisca. Whether it is private course or no matter. So whether you have experience in giving assessment, yeah, because the assessment can be in the various forms, right? It can be formal, informal. Yeah. Let's say like the interview with the students, or we have a kind of students conference. What does it mean? Students conference. Students conference. Student conference means you have conversation with a few students after the class. So sometimes in the past, before the COVID, a few students approached me to ask some question because perhaps I don't know, perhaps they were not comfortable to ask questions during the class, or perhaps because they might be shy enough, not. So sometimes the students conference is more effective because I could get more information about the students' problems, and so sometimes some questions are more suitable to be put in the informal situation or after the class. That is in the formal situation. That is called students' conference, meaning having conversation with a few students after the class. But the problem, the teachers are so busy, meaning moving from one class to another, because I suppose there is only 10 minutes break between moving from one class to another. But sometimes you are free after the class, so and then that time can be used for the students conference. But also there are few lecturers who are awfully busy, meaning the tightly schedule from morning to evening or even to night, yeah, the teaching also, if he or she is like Bu Deli or Pak Agus, meaning becoming the head of the program or something like that. Okay, let me check in your attendance. Some of you are not able to scan. Okay, please put your questions on the meeting chat while I'm checking your. Yeah, 3 of you cannot scan the barcode. Yeah. Stella is here. Hello, Stella.
Hello. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I'm here.
Okay, yeah. Then Hen Farouk. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but I couldn't scan the code.
Okay, yeah. So I've clicked. So now already what check
Thank you so much.
in green, yeah. Francisca Bubur. Francisca Inapaska
Yes, sir.
Bubur. Yeah,
Yes, sir. I'm here.
yeah. I wonder about your face, ya. Saya belum pernah lihat wajah Anda gitu.
Yeah, this is my first time.
Yang lainnya saya sudah pernah lihat itu ya. Okay, I suppose all of you already check ya, the meaning present, hadir ya. I had in teaching of informal course, but it was my own course, like small course at home, I think. I think when I give them the assessment, I use both formative and summative assessment by giving them quiz after every week teaching and the final assessment after all 8 meetings. Okay, what for Nurul? Yeah. What kind of test did you give? It is multiple choice or oral or written for your final assessment?
It's multiple choice, sir.
I see. So what subject, like grammar or contrast?
Just basic in English, like about verb and nouns, something like that, sir.
Yeah. So if you just give test, just vocab or what types of the apa jenis kata itu? How do you say in English in grammatical term?
Part of speech, sir.
Yeah, parts of
Yes.
speech or just vocab or grammar. So what kind of test is it? What do you call?
Mm, I don't know, sir, but
If you just test like the vocab, you just test the
yes,
grammar, you just reading,
just test
you
like
just test
grammar.
writing. What do you call? I
Mm,
suppose Erwina mentioned that kind of test, right? Apa istilahnya, Erwina? Kalau hanya ngetes, if you just give test merely noun or merely vocab, merely let's say like listening or pronunciation or just writing or just reading or just speaking. What is it?
Itu non integratif.
Ya, istilahnya apa? What is the term? Non-integratif tadi apa? Integrative meaning combinations. So you combine the 4 scales. You could say holistic test, yeah, and
Discrete
this,
point, Pak.
yeah, discrete points or satu lagi apa? Another one, starting with A, discrete test, yeah, and or starting with A, atomic, yeah, atomic test. Atomic gitu ya, atom ya. Jadi atom terdiri dari atom-atom itu. Atomic test or discrete test. How about giving integrative test? Have you ever done, Mbak Nurul? Giving integrative test?
no, sir, because I don't have so much experience
Yeah.
in teaching. Just like give them the basic of tasks that I know.
What are the examples of integrative tests? Anyone? Or Mas Hakim? Contoh, ya. Contoh tes yang integratif tadi disebutkan. What are the examples of integrative tests? Integrated test.
Close passage.
Yeah, close test. Yeah.
Dictations.
Yeah, how do you carry out close test? How do you carry out close test? How do you write? How do you write the close test passage?
By having the deleted words, then
Yeah.
the test taker have to fill up the missing words.
Yeah, like fill in the blank. And what is the pattern? What is the pattern? Polanya bagaimana? For close procedure, what is the pattern? So deletion ya, meaning deletion. Ada rumusnya tuh? Ingat enggak? Do you remember? Rumus close procedure.
Every 6 or 7.
Yeah, okay. The every 6, so it should be, so you have to count, yeah. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you delete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You delete. So you could choose what the length of the passage, meaning don't be too long or also don't be too short. So you cannot choose as you wish, but if deliberately you choose which kinds of words found in the passage, not using that formula, what do you call? it is not close procedure, but just fill in the blank gitu. If you just want to test like it can be verbs or prepositions, jadi enggak. So just ignore the pattern, meaning you don't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but so you could select types of words will be deleted. So it is called just fill in the blank, not close procedure. The second one, what is it? For the integrated test.
Dictation, sir.
Yeah, dictation. Yeah, dictation. So by giving close procedure and dictation, because they assume that from those two kinds of tests, so it will involve and your skills, language skill. Let's say like the listening, your grammar, and also what your vocab, mastery of the vocab and so on, because it is quite popular for giving integrated test. Okay, and any other comments? So please read again the handouts, meaning both ebooks and also PowerPoints are from other journals concerning the theory. So you could share more information, so we could discuss the more, meaning that we will be more knowledgeable. Yeah. So by sharing the information from your reading, from your knowledge, also from my knowledge. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, we still have 10 minutes. Any more comments or questions? Also, you start reading the guidelines of the language testing projects gitu ya, supaya tidak seperti yang kemarin itu, yang the previous semester. So I instructed to check with me before being tried out, just to avoid any, and also read samples of tests and the multiple choice tests from Hidden, how to construct the test, also how to give prompts or instruction. Instruksi atau prompts itu ya tadi bentuk perintah ya. Also the format. Okay, if you don't have any questions, we can stop now. Thank you for joining the class and see you next week. So next week will be chapter 2 presented by whom? Pak Erwina, saya lupa ya daftarnya. Chapter 2 by
Francisca and Nurul, sir.
Francisca and Nurul ya. The Principles of Language Assessment, the fourth ya. Minggu depan sudah tanggal 4 oh ya. Sudah Maret ya. Principles of Language Assessment, Francisca and Nurul ya.
Sir, one question.
Okay.
Regarding the theory and methodology test, theory and methodology class on Monday, because Monday is a holiday. We have holiday, tanggal merah. So it's actually again is our turn, me and Lutfi, who have to do the presentation. So shall we find the replacement day, or how we do, sir.
Yeah, let me check with the schedule in the SIAP. Yeah. So if what kind of holiday is it? What?
Isra Mikraj, sir.
I see. Yeah. So if the date is there, and then we could have like the what attendance, and then the cost will be carried out for another day. And then I could check in the system. Ya, kalau cek di sistem itu tidak akan bentrok gitu ya. Nanti saya. So let's me check in the date. Kalau nanti sampai tanggal merah itu tetap ada gitu ya, pesan saja, karena kadang-kadang harus. The procedure of changing the schedule is meaning you have to report to the operator, and then they will arrange the new schedule. I could tell Mbak Mita for changing the schedule. Okay, thank you, Armina, for informing the red holiday ya, tanggal merah.
Welcome, sir.
The red date, yeah, okay, yeah. Next Monday will be holiday, right?
Yes, sir. It's Isra Mikraj.
Reschedule for another time. Yeah. Okay, thank you again. Thank you for joining the class, and see you next week.
Thank you, sir.